All right, so thanks for having me. I'm Peter, and I'm going to talk about, this will be a very fast talk about cloud-native applications, so it will be like 10 minutes. I'll have a couple of examples, but I'll share the presentation with you after the talk, so you don't need to take pictures or anything. Everything will be shared afterwards. So again, hi, I'm Peter. I'm a CTO at a company called FlowUp, and we do cloud-native solutions. We're basically, we're based in Brno, which is Czech Republic, hour and a half from Vienna. I'm a Google developer expert for cloud, and if you want to reach out to me, I'll be here for the rest of the meetup, or you can just use the social links. So let's start with cloud-native applications and what do you actually need there. Just to be on the same page, when we look at clouds, you basically need to know these three things. When you look at the traditional computer, you get these three every time together. But when you look at clouds, you get all these things sometimes together or sometimes very separately. So for example, when you get networking, you can get only load balancers, or when you look at things like storage, you can get only disks and so on. So there are many services, and you should actually use these services separately as well, to maximize scaling and to reduce your costs. Now, whoops, okay. I think it just, all right, I'll just use this one. So the first thing that you want to do when you're going to be going to cloud is containerization. Containerization is a very simple process right now because you basically use all the things that you have, but you build your application with things like Docker or any other image building utilities. And I recommend to use multi-stage builds, which you can see on this slide. Basically what you do is you build your application the traditional way, and this brings you like a 1.5 gig container or image, which is not really sufficient for distribution. But what you can do next is you can use this second step, which basically creates another container, another image, which is far smaller because it's Alpine. What you do, you copy all the stuff there, you install certificates so we can communicate with the world, and you're good to go. Now you have 20 megs image, which is very simple to distribute. And one more thing, if you can, don't push anything like configurations or secrets or anything like that into your containers, because that thing just backfires. Now, when we go deeper, one level deeper basically, we get to logging, and that's what you want from your application from the start. Many people think that logging in cloud is a different thing, but literally only different thing there is you don't want to use any external service directly in your app. You want your app to use the standard logging as much as possible, and then rely on the underlying infrastructure such as exporters that are on the machine or in Docker or on any other host to export those things into Elk Stack or any other monitoring tool. They will aggregate it for you, which means you can just use std-out, and then what you do is you use formatters. For example, on GCloud, or when you're using Elk Stack, you can use JSON formatters. This will bring you to a point where you will be logging with fields, and these fields are very important for your application. And it's because then when you look at the tools will let you filter on these. So this is basically like the first level where you look when you're debugging something or where you want to when you want to know what's your application actually doing. Why is this cool? Because you can then use the JSON payload or anything that you put into your fields and basically filter on that very quickly. The next thing that you want to do, and this is to keep up with your application on a more high level on what it's doing, and it's OpenTelemetry. There's one library that I recommend using, and it's OpenCensus. So right now, OpenCensus and OpenTracing, both libraries are part of the OpenTelemetry project. But what you want to do here is you sometimes want to use some metrics. You don't want to just know that the app is healthy or unhealthy. You actually want to know if the latency is good, if anything that you're doing like counters, if you're processing good, if you're processing the requests in a time that you want to process them, and so on and so forth. And here, basically the same applies as for logging. OpenCensus gives you more of an abstract way to dealing with these metrics, because what you want to do here, or what we're doing here, for example, is we're creating a view for aggregation, and we're basically creating a distribution And every time we push something into this distribution, it then gets exported somewhere. Where you export it is then basically on the specific tool. So like the way you create all the stuff is very abstract, and you're not relying on any provider or basically anything but the library that OpenCensus has. On the other hand, when you want to export it, you can export it to anything that's really supported. And right now they have many supported tools or many supported libraries. Here you can see we're using StackDriver, which is GCP. And by just changing this one line, you can then export to other tools as well. So the last thing I want to talk about is GoCloud Development Kit. Anybody heard about it? Yeah? Good. Did you guys use it, the toolkit? All right. So I got two examples here. The first example is asynchronous tasks, and these, like, it's always about the same thing. You're just using some abstraction, and then if you want to, you can use the cloud provider or anything that you want. What GoCloud has GoCloud has a very cool idea behind it, and the idea is that you can use any provider, which means right now AWS, GCP, or Azure, or you can use the same code on your local machines with open source alternatives, which means I think this one may be using something like Kafka or Redis as well. What you do, you're not seeing basically anything that's provider specific here. Everything is pure PubSub. And if you want to use this on AWS, you basically import a driver for AWS. If you want to use this with Kafka, you import a driver for Kafka, and so on. But sometimes you actually need those specific features because some messages, for example, on GCP or AWS, you can use things like timeouts or retries and so on. And these are can be configured for each message. And the library basically gives you this opportunity by exporting everything for you, so you can then use the same messages, or you can use this interface, which is very abstract, or you can use the type which has GCP or AWS. And that's very easy to use as well. And last thing, which is really cool, and this is I think the first thing that came out with GoCloud, and that's storage. So right now, or back then when you wanted to use like blob storage buckets, basically, through multiple clouds or multi-cloud strategy, you need to basically import AWS SDK, GCloud SDK, and all the stuff, and then kind of use their APIs, which was kind of different every time, to basically do what you want in your buckets. With GoCloud, what you do is every time you have just the same code, and all the changes in the code is basically the driver on the top. So you can use the same code everywhere, and that's the idea behind GoCloud. If there's one thing you should remember from this talk, it's you should always focus on your application. And if you're not focusing, or if you feel like you're reinventing the wheel, or I don't know, you're just not doing your business logic, then it doesn't, or it shouldn't be in your app or in your container, and it may be outside in some tool, which like Clouds has a lot of tools, so just use them. And if you want more, there are two great resources here. The first one are SRE books, which is more about the reliability of the applications, and then you can get like things like how do I set up my metrics, how do I set up my SLOs or objectives, how do I monitor all this stuff, and so on. And if you want to know if there's a tool for what you want, then I recommend going to Landscape CNCF.io and just try to navigate that, because there's like tens or maybe hundreds of tools right now that you can get. So that's it. Thank you.